Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, 7 p.m. GMT here at twitch.tv/TNI stream. Welcome to Documentation Not Included. My name is Josie. This is episode version 2.5. Us versus them.
Yes, indeed. And once again, we are missing Patrick. Patrick said he was going to be back today, but unfortunately he doesn't have internet in his new flat. He has moved. He is coming back, and hopefully it'll be next week. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and hopefully his PC gets sorted as well.
Indeed.
Shipping.
Yeah, yeah, he sent us some pictures and they've not been kind at all. So yes, our guest today is the awesome, I've been looking forward to this, Dan Howarth. And it is, just for, if anyone's noticed the second name similarities going on here, we have Josie's husband.
Better half.
And he is a sysadmin. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So please do tell everybody what you do, what you're here for, and we'll go from there.
I'm here under duress. No.
Oh my gosh!
I was made to do this. Yeah, I'm Dan Howarth. I have been in the IT industry in primarily sysadmin roles for too long. 18 years now. Almost up to the 18-year anniversary. I've worked for hosting companies, telcos, managed hosting providers, managed service providers, supporting some larger websites, mostly known to UK people, video-on-demand platforms, incorporating almost everything from physical servers back in the early 2000s, all the way up through virtualization, AWS, Azure. I've done some DevOps. I've stepped in for the odd developer now and again, a little bit when things need fixing. And up to today, I've got a lovely title, Site Reliability Engineer.
Oh, I like that.
We love titles on this show.
And that's like DevOps engineer. It's many things to many people.
Yeah.
Actually, I like Tool Tepe's description of you. He does server magic and Linux rituals.
Nice. I like that too.
Yeah.
And also
usually involving some runes and some blood, you know.
Runes, blood, and salt. Oh, that's for the RTFM. We'll get there. But first, we have our icebreaker question before we go into our topic, and I have a fun one, specifically picked for my husband. So, if you could classify yourself as any type of astrological body in space, what would you classify yourself as and why? My husband loves space.
Commence the beard rubbing, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
I automatically went there. Automatically. It's like it's drawing it out, isn't it?
And while you do that, mad props to Envina, who points out that salt is the most important internet item ever. So, she's not wrong. I'll answer first, since you guys seem to be beard stumped, and those of us without beards seem to be able to clearly get to the answer. For me, it would be like a neutron star. I like the way they pulse. I'm addicted to the game Elite Dangerous. So I love their visual representation of them and how you can use them to boost yourself. This is not exactly 100% science, mind you, but I love the idea that there are stars out there that spin so fast that they throw out tails, and they can look like bow ties at the right angle, and they're just really cool. And it's just fascinating to me because they create a lot of light and a lot of energy. And I just find it neat. And I may not be one, but I really want to be. I want to be full of light and full of energy and spinning around. And maybe if someone wears me, I look like a bow tie. I don't know.
This is guest's honour. I have to pass it on to the guest to start off with.
Call out, Chris.
I'd like to say me and my kind are more like black holes. No one notices you're there until everything's going really sideways. And then you are the most important thing.
Yeah.
And we swallow up lots of stuff like money.
See, I was going to say black hole myself for the Event Horizon, mainly because the Event Horizon is a really interesting concept in space. The point of no return, the point of I mean, I'm no scientist, I'm no physicist or whatever. I don't know the details in and out, but I have done quite a lot of, accidental wiki learning. When you click on something and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper. Years ago, I was trying to find a band name for a band, for one of my bands, and I came up with Black Shift, which was like a play on Red Shift, which was a play on, not a play, it was something to do, I read something to do with black holes, and I got really deep into it. But yeah, the idea of a event horizon that can kind of fold in on itself, but I don't know. This is as far as I'm going to get with it, I'm afraid. Celestial bodies fascinate me, space fascinates me, but I'm not that knowledgeable about it.
I'm surprised no one said Tesla car with Rocket Man in it.
Yes.
It is an astrological body now because it is in space. But and Venus says that she would be a black hole as dark as her soul.
Well, it's not technically dark, though, is it? That's the thing. That's what's interesting about a black hole. Is that it's nothing. It's not really defined. It doesn't have. Is it really infinitely dense matter, or I can't remember what the definition of a black hole is.
Shame, I don't remember, and I have Stephen Hawking's fantastic book on them on the shelf over there.
I have it,
but
behind
I don't
me.
remember.
It's on my list.
None of us are astronomers,
No.
or astrologers. Yeah, let me throw astrologers right in there with the science. Whoopsies. But yeah.
Right, so yes, on to our topic, us versus them. Now, this is something I have, again, quite a lot of opinions and experience of. But I'd like to know, obviously, Dan's set the topic, so I'd like to know why you're bringing this up. What's it? Why is it important to you in your day-to-day life? Does it happen to you now? Because it's something that's kind of passed me by. I don't really get this anymore.
Yeah, so you guys asked me to be on the show, and obviously your stream is more development-oriented and developer-oriented, so me being a knuckle-dragging primate of a sysadmin.
Didn't say it. Didn't say that.
I thought I could bring something different to the table for 1 week. And I have to say, before we get started, this is purely based on my opinions, my experiences over the last 18 years in ITSM. In the ITSM industry, in the ops side of things.
For those who don't know, ITSM is IT Service Management.
Yes. So, but I lived very much in that world, and then for a few years I moved into a DevOps type role, so I worked really closely with developers, and then there's always been that contact for a number of years. And it's all based around an observation of, I want to say tribes.
Cliques,
yeah. Sides, teams, yeah. Jets versus sharks or whatever,
I would kill to see sysadmins and devs perform musicals as they argued in scrums or something. That would be amazing.
So when I came up with what the subject matter for this week, I'm oversimplifying it. I'm turning it into sysadmins and developers. It's something I've seen so many times. I've seen people have a genuine dislike, a very deep-seated, almost hate of, well, that's a developer, they're an idiot.
Mm-hmm. I have seen this.
Yeah, and I've been friends with developers who say, oh, I don't like them, they're just a sysadmin, they're a monkey, they're a reboot monkey, whatever, 100 titles. And it's something I wanted to talk about how destructive it can be.
What? Just before we go any further, though,
yeah.
What is your opinion of? I know we're going to dig into this, but what's your opinion of other people on other teams? Do you ever stereotype? Do you ever categorize that the business analysts as people who just do this or have this particular skill and don't really. And if you do, why do you do that?
I tend not to these days. I take everyone as they come. I've worked with so many people over the years. Everyone has their strengths. Everyone has a role that they need to fulfill. They may not do, in my perception, particularly well, but that's their role to fill. Mm-hmm. And that's their business, whether they do it well or not. If they don't, everyone else just has to clean up after them.
Now, someone in chat just said what I was thinking, actually, because a lot of the time in my past, the them versus us has been between the technical people, no matter who they are, whether they're a graphic designer or a sysadmin or, they're a developer, and the salespeople, especially in the smaller companies.
Oh, the bean counters. God help me.
Now, the reason for that divide, in my experience, between techies and non-techies, or salespeople specifically, is that a lot of the salespeople I've worked with anyway in the past have been, they are just there to sell a product, and they oversell, or they sell something that is either technically infeasible, or they overpromise on what the technical people can do. Yeah, we can do that website, for example. That'll take us a week. What? See, absolutely not.
I have, in the things that I've done, I've seen similar things like that, but I have also seen the sales side approach the developers or the sysadmins or whoever on that entire technical side and go, what can you do? This is what we'd like to offer. And the response is, no, that is not possible with that current platform. This needs to be rethought out. And they were completely ignored. Mm-hmm. So for me, it is a bit of that, that us v them with the bean counter, or I should say the pocket change holders, because they're so stingy with their budgets. And the tech side. But I have actually seen the whole concept between the developers of platforms and the people who have to host the platforms. I've seen that kind of, I'd almost say antagonism as well.
I've seen it between support and development. I've seen it between management and sales. I've seen it in every respect. It's not, as Dan said, he's oversimplifying it, and we have to keep some focus on the podcast. But yeah, it happens everywhere, and it's entirely, as Dan said, based on individuals. It's based on an individual, maybe potentially sometimes a poisonous individual that spreads that poison throughout a team, and it becomes culture.
Yeah. I think it's a little more than that, and obviously, as we're saying, we're simplifying things, but to me, the number one time I have seen any kind of antagonism occur with an us v them, regardless of whether they're bean counter or tech or sysadmin or developer, or even, Joe Blow and his desk calling tech support to help because he's locked himself out of his PC. It's usually because the goals are at a cross purpose. Mm-hmm. Because in the end, everyone has their role, whatever that role may be.
Everyone has different values and drivers as well.
Well, this is true. But if everyone has the same goal, if everyone is working towards the same purpose, it's a lot easier. But if you have two people whose agendas are completely cross-purpose, so which is why the bean counter for us as developers, or even tech people, tech leads, tech architects, it's they have to fight those bean counters as well. They'll be like, look, I'm going to sell this because my priority, my goal is making money and looking good. And the tech side or the developers are sitting there going, but you're promising them to go faster than the speed of light, which is not physically possible.
Yep.
And then the goals no longer align, do they? And the same thing happens when you have us poor, fantastically wonderful dev people going, hey, we need you guys to, give us a server to work on, please. Can we have it set up tomorrow? Yes? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why containerization is wonderful.
Oh.
So,
sorry.
Dan has a great story about containerization and how little people know containers, but yeah.
I've got too many stories. I keep forgetting them. So I'll be really brief with this, but I'm trying to find the right words now. So my first job in the IT industry was in a hosting company, doing tech support, working shifts. So the us v them was us and sales, or us and account managers. There were no developers. The company didn't develop anything. After that, I went to what I perceived to be a really good example of us v them. So I was in managed service team. We did support, we built servers, we looked after servers, and we were on the second floor of a building. On the first floor were the developers. So not only was there a personality difference with us saying, oh, they're just developers, and developers going, oh, they're just sysadmins. There was also a physical separation. There was a physical divide because we were separated on different floors. So while I worked there, I went into DevOps team. So I moved down a floor, and I was sitting in a big room with a bunch of developers. Mm-hmm. And it was really enlightening. I learned a lot. I learned to appreciate that there's no need for the us v them, because we were there to do a job. We were there to work together. We had common goals, but we were coming at it from different directions. We had different paths to get to that end goal. And so that's what changed my perception. After that, I went into the lion's den. I went into a 3-person DevOps team in a development house.
Okay.
So the only sysadmins were like 2 or 3 guys, top floor, who did laptops and stuff, and a couple of servers. But it was all developers. So my clients were developers. Yeah, that was an interesting time.
Now, I've worked with lots of different types of developers and lots of different types of development teams as well. I'm very lucky in that most of the time these days I'm usually independent. It's entirely independent, and I hand off what I've done to other people after I finished it. I very, very rarely get involved in day-to-day processes. So I don't really have an us versus them anymore. And if I do see that, I usually take it upon myself to try and change someone's opinion or change someone's mind on why, not necessarily pointing out that they're doing this wrong or anything like that, trying to figure out what their actual issue is and then trying to come up with some kind of solution, whether it's a process-driven thing or it's a reporting thing, or most of the time it's process-driven. If there isn't a process in place to provision a new laptop.
Oh, I think it's one step even further than that, Chris. In the situations that I have seen, and the fantastic poor stories that I have heard from my poor husband as he has come home and banged his head against a desk going, why? There is the processes that are in place for developers can actually vary greatly from the processes that are put in place for system administrators, even if they follow a relatively similar kind of changelog or ITIL platform or anything else like that. Now, when we had Ed Screenager on the show before, he talked about what it was like trying to handle the processes as a support person. Now, support people tend to have to balance both sort of dev with good documentation, sort of good sysadministrator. They kind of have to be the gatekeepers. Then you had, when we had Gareth on, Gazimov, for people who knew him, when we were talking about what it's like to try to bring in enterprise development into, say, game development, there's processes that are in place that can make everyone work towards the same goal. Unfortunately, a lot of what I have seen is that if you are dealing with sysadministration, your processes never the twain shall meet with anybody else. And if you are dealing specifically with, say, DevOps or development, it's the same thing. Never the twain shall meet. And it's almost like the departments are siloed. And that's what creates the us v them.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think the silo side of things necessarily create. I mean, yes, it can.
It can, because the processes are so separated out from each other that, like you said before, you're dealing with a group of people who are developing a methodology for handling things that becomes a corporate culture. Like maybe they handle change logs over the water cooler, or change requests over a water cooler. God forbid, but it can happen. And if in Dan's case, he had a chance to step into the shoes of somebody else. He was able to sit near DevOps and learn about what developers do. And that opened his eyes. Very, very, very rarely do you see the sysadmins, the reboot monkeys, the knuckle-dragging monkeys who are just responsible for the servers being up, integrate with the developers. That, at least where I see the SVM
I've never had that
happen.
opinion of sysadmins. I've got to say, I've never had that. They're just reboot monkeys. I've never heard that term before. I've seen
that term used derogatively against system administrators.
I mean, I can understand why it may happen, but I personally have always looked at people who work with the hardware and the infrastructure in a company as support, for a development team, because they provision hardware, they give us the infrastructure and the networking and things to allow us to do our job. It's when they I say this is the them, they. It's when they
pronoun game.
Now, whether again this is a process thing or whether this is an individual thing or a laziness thing, and this happens on both sides of the fence, when they put up barriers, when they put up blockades that stop you from achieving your goal in your workplace. So let's say, for example, I need a new server. I worked at one of my very first jobs. We had a engineering team. They created servers and then also provisioned these very bespoke pieces of hardware that got deployed onto customer sites. We wrote the software that went on these servers, and then we wrote the bespoke tasks that went onto these bespoke pieces of software as well, pieces of hardware as well. When we were stopped from doing that because we had a deadline and they hadn't done what they were supposed to have done, that was the only time that it became a problem. In my eyes, that was the only time that it ever became a them versus us. Oh, they haven't done it again.
See, I throw out a sort of similar kind of situation that seems to be one of the more common ones of late, which is dealing with the DevOps side of things. And we'll let Dan speak at some point in time, I promise. It's just until then. But anyway, you have the DevOps, and it looks like everything should be okay. Okay. We have the DevOps, and the DevOps provision a server. Mm-hmm. They need a server to do, I don't know, we'll say a staging environment on or something else like that. And the sysadmins, for lack of a better term, because they're usually network engineers or tech architects, like their titles be titles. Yep. They'll turn around and they will say, oh, I can't give you what you need right now because you don't have the budget for it.
We haven't got the budget signed off. We haven't had,
or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've seen developers sort of have the road break be that, then the concern is how it's addressed. Because I've seen developers turn around and go, they're just trying to stop me from doing the job. When that's not the case. It's literally, I cannot do what you are asking me to do.
So, again, this is why I was raising this, because it's not always people being lazy. Like, the perception is. This is, again, it's about perception, and it's about communication between the departments, or communication from management or from people who are passing down the commands into these various departments. You don't have... you can tell the development team, you don't have a budget. The IT guys haven't had their budget to signed off to provision the server yet because the client hasn't signed it off. We think that there's a go-live date in a week, and we haven't been told that there isn't a go. It's a communication problem and a process problem.
I think it's also a miseducation process. You can have a group of developers asking for the system admins to give them servers. And when the system admin turns around and goes, sure, we'll provision you 10 servers. They'll be located on this box. Well, why can't we have 10 physical boxes? That's not the way this works. Mm-hmm. It's 10 virtual servers you get provisioned because of how everything's set up with virtualization and the cloud again. So it's almost like a lack of understanding of the architecture and the unwillingness to hear what the other side is trying to say. Yeah. Whether they're trying to say, I can't provision you what you're asking for because what you're asking for doesn't actually exist, or what you're asking for is way beyond the scope of what is allowed, or it's the we really need to do this and we really need these things to make it happen. Like we need Java running constantly.
Yep. I'm going to give you an exact example of this happening to me very recently, and how I dealt with it as well, and how other developers, namely more junior developers, have dealt with it. Okay, right. We are having a few technical problems. We're trying not to mention it, but I have to move some windows around and throw some people out of the chat room. But anyway, I think we're okay now. So yes, I had an issue, a thing that came up. I was a new developer in a rather large company. All the developers had their own physical machines. And all of the physical machines were all i7s with 32 gig RAM, and they were brilliant for development. You had your own Visual Studio and everything else installed on them, right? There was a decision made when I started that they were going to move to VMs. And so we were the guinea pigs for this. Now, as a developer, working inside a VM is nothing but a headache for multiple reasons. There are compatibility issues, there are speed issues, there are latency problems, but it gives the company benefit. In terms of costs, mainly, and also being able to provision a new server with all of the right hardware and all of the all of the right resources and all of the signed off software very, very, very quickly. Now I understand that, and the way that I dealt with it was, right, I will use this when I need to, but luckily I'm at home, so I can use my own development machine for new pieces of software, but source code is on their network, I can't get it off, security policies, etc. And so I have to deal with it. There's not really much I can do about that. Junior developers would be essentially very, very angry about that. And they will raise issues with management over and over and over again. And they will get nowhere because there's a decision that's already been made. It doesn't matter what you do and what you say. Unfortunately, you have to deal with it. Now, that's policy again.
It goes back to the politics of things, and it goes back to the whole concept of policy. I think there are a couple of things that cause the SVM, and see if you agree, Dan. Mm-hmm. Tech issues and all that stuff that goes with you.
Hopefully you got the gist of what we've been saying.
You probably heard me from downstairs. But the very first thing is having goals cross a line. The second thing is lack of communication. I think the third thing is a lack of understanding. And, if you go after a developer because they're requesting something that they feel is a necessity, and you go at them with the intent of, it's just them being developers again, you're part of the problem, not the solution. If you're a developer and you're like, they're just causing me more issues and I won't be able to run that Git, sort of thing, or,
I don't have the ideal environment that I need.
You don't have all the things that you necessarily want. That's another thing. It's more times than not, there is a huge, IT is a big word. Anyone who says they work in IT, please take a moment and ask them what part. It's like someone saying, I'm a doctor. Great, you're a doctor of what? Medicine, literature, romance novels from the 1500s? Like, what is your doctorate in? It's that kind of in-depth thing. It is a mighty big umbrella, and and especially with all of our horrible terms for jobs, but there is an awful lot in there. And if you take a moment and you just go, okay, you're saying no to me Why? What is the real reason? And I'm saying, I need this. Can you help me get at least what my goal towards is? Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard a developer ask for something and a system administrator turn around and go, yes, we can do that, but not the way you think. It's done a different way now. Or vice versa. So,
you see, I think part of the biggest problem with the us v them mentality, whether it's sysadmins and developers or support and sales or whatever, wherever there's a us and them, we're great, they're rubbish kind of attitude, a lot of the time it's not anyone going after anyone else. It's not people having arguments. It's quite the opposite. It's people not communicating, not saying, here's why we can't do this because of reason A, B, and C, but here's what we can do for you, X, Y, Z. And that's part of it. The other facet to it, in my experience, is when someone new joins a given team, they're doing the training, they're doing the onboarding, there's going to be a mention of, oh, these guys, this team, this person, they're an idiot, they're rubbish. Don't do this with them. Don't do it the way it's meant to be done. Don't do the way the process or whatever decisions have been made dictates. Do it this other way. Well, that's going to go contrary to what they're meant to do and how they're meant to interact with those other people. And it's a lack of communication. It's a lack of understanding. If you don't sit down and say, here's why I disagree with you, if you just don't say anything and then you crack on and do what you're going to do, what you want to do anyway, all it does is breed apathy and contempt and a dislike from someone else. Whereas what I've found, especially in the last 6 months, I've been at the company I work for just over 6 months now. 9 times out of 10, if you can sit down with someone on a Teams call, Skype call, just picking up the phone and talking to them, it goes most of the way to being you justify why you're saying, no, I can't do this, or yes, I'm going to do it, but it's not going to be how you expect. Because in the end, the person on the end of the phone, the person on the other end of the email or chat message or whatever, they are a human being with their goals, their targets, and all they want to do. They're like everyone else. They want to get to the end of the day. They want to go home and watch EastEnders or eat a pizza or whatever, and then get paid at the end of the month. Yeah. We're all trying to do the same thing, and that they're human beings with hobbies outside that.
It is worth saying that there are people who are out there, and they're out there to be just awkward. It does happen. There is a. My wife's got a saying: if you can imagine the person, they exist somewhere in the world. My wife used to work for a very large organisation as a change manager, and her manager was the biggest nightmare. Everything was just put out to be awkward. There was lots of process involved, but it was ridiculous how far this person would go to make her life a misery, and not her life, but everybody else's life as well, because she was unhappy in herself. But it comes back to this word that we love on this show, sonder. It comes back to this realizing that everyone else exists, and everyone else has their own values, their own focus, their own life that's as complicated as yours. Just being able to have a word for that understanding has helped me understand people a bit better, and understand that I've no idea what's going on in your lives at the moment. I've got absolutely no idea, and I'll never know. Even if you told me, my life is always going to be more important to me, and your life is going to be always more important to you. And the same applies to everybody. And as long as you can understand, have this empathy with other people, that even if they are being an arsehole that day, there's probably a very good reason for it, They probably need some help, some support, rather than you being awkward back, or being obstructive, or not helping them. You know?
Yeah, a lot of the time, one of the biggest and the more difficult skills to learn is compromise.
Yes.
Instead of just going, this is what I want, that's the only thing I'm going to accept and nothing less. If two people have that attitude directed at each other, nothing's going to get done. No one's going to achieve anything, and all it's going to breed is people going home miserable.
Yep, and butting of heads, constant butting of heads.
It just doesn't serve anyone any good. It doesn't do anyone any good.
You know, we've made mention of this before in the past about being a developer, but leave your ego at the bloody door.
No.
You know, there is absolutely nothing wrong with coming in and going, I think this is the way to do it. And then someone turns around and goes, yeah, but have you considered this? Oh, okay, gotcha. I'm still learning. Too many people have that sort of fixed mentality of this is the exact thing I need, regardless of whether it's whatever, us or them. And they have this thing so fixed in their mind that they are completely and utterly stubborn about it. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they can't be wrong. And it's because of their ego getting in the way.
Oh,
at no point in time. Oh, there at no point in time in this IT world, and this is something I ranted about last week, there is no such thing as utopia. Screw those bloody questions of what's your utopian developer environment, what's your utopian system environment. Like, screw that. There is no such thing. And the reason why is because for every single project you take on, regardless of what your role is in IT, the parameters are going to change enough that almost any kind of new-fangled thing or old-fangled thing or combination of it could become the utopian environment for you, but not necessarily the person sitting next to you also doing the job that you're doing as well.
I'm not sure who said it, but there's that famous quote, there's only one constant in life, and that's change. And the same applies to work. You know, work is life. Life is compromise. Work is compromise. Work is change. Constant change. And IT is probably the best example of change because we are still growing as an industry. We can never have everything. What was perfect 10 years ago, or even a year ago, what was perfect for my development? Yeah, yesterday. You know, it's ridiculous how quickly.
2 hours ago, they just put out another release. They just pushed the repo.
I've spent the last 2 weeks learning an entirely new tech landscape in the IT world that I'd never even brushed upon before. And it's fascinating to me, but it requires a hell of a lot of change in terms of how I need to work, you know? And it's a constant thing in IT.
I use the phrase, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because that is exactly what it is. That to me sums up IT. It sums up security in IT. It sums up development in IT. It sums up hardware in IT. It sums up everything. Now, Tultepe, our fantastic individual from the Norways, you must come on to the show at some time. I really want to talk to you about PLCs. But anyway, says, I'm very stubborn when it comes to my dev work. But then again, I will change my mind instantly if someone throws a better idea or concept, etc. at you.
That's a bit of an oxymoron. You can't be stubborn but change your mind when someone gives you a better idea.
No, but this is the thing. I have to disagree with you, Chris, because I think someone can be stubborn and very dogged at what they believe, but as long as they're open to having their mind changed, to looking at it differently, and that's where the communication comes into it. If you communicate with other people, you can get your ideas out there and then come to some compromise.
Yep.
Well, Tultepe continues, they need to prove to me that they're right.
You see, that's great, but the part of the proving part is usually can be a drawn-out process. It can take a while to get to a point where, and usually it's not they're right and I'm wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right. It's usually this compromise in the middle as we keep. That's the word of the day, isn't it?
Compromise.
Yeah.
Compromise.
And you know, it goes to the old analogy of cats. There isn't just one way to skin a cat, although people might not like that kind of.
I'm not actually sure what that means as a.
There's more than one way to skin a cat. It's an old saying from I don't know, 19th century.
I've heard it. I just never really understood
Yeah, it just means there's more than one way to do something.
Yeah.
Well, I know what it meant. I just meant I don't know what the original analogy, the etymology of
Yeah,
it. You know?
I don't know.
No, we are not going to even go into the etymology of such a concept
Yeah,
on the
let's
show.
not.
I will cry. We don't want that.
No,
It's one of those things I say without thinking. So.
Oh, nah, it's all good.
I get the idea, though. I mean,
it's.
I mean, and that's again,
that's
true in development. There is 100 ways for me to do the same thing. Just look at the web development frameworks in the world, for God's sake. Just look at the JavaScript for development, and that's just one type of web development.
And look at how. Look at how people set up their own personal development platforms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your own local machine or your own local setup for how you go through everything from local tests to stage. And like, there's so many ways to do things that it is insane, which is why I stress leave your ego at the bloody door. Because if you put those blinders up to someone from a different department who is trying to help you, you are going to miss out on potentially the next greatest thing where you could go back and get some education in it and make more money. I'm just saying. I mean, that tends to happen in our industry. Something new, big, and shiny shows up, and you can make more money.
And that's the thing, being open to new ideas isn't just new ideas.
No.
It's learning new stuff and having new experiences and being able to learning how to, albeit subconsciously sometimes, learning how to look at things in a different way. Approaching things differently.
So before we move on to our RTFM, because we're nearly at the end of the show, can you believe it? It's went very quickly today. Before we move on to our RTFM, to a junior in IT, not a specific developer or a DevOps guy or a sysadmin, a junior, somebody who doesn't have the experience that us three do, because you've got to admit that this does come with experience of learning and being with lots of different people and spending time with lots of different types of teams and types of people. As you said yourself, Dan, you went into a DevOps role, you worked with developers closely, and then you not suddenly maybe, but that was the penny that dropped, and you realised that they're doing it this way they're being this way because they have these pressures and these constraints and these requirements, and they work in this way. However, whatever it was, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to a new person in the industry?
Piece of advice
to try and get them to understand why their way of thinking in this instance, because it's usually the younger people that think in a more obstructive way anyway.
Yeah,
to get them over that.
And I've been there, I've been a shift leader and had new people coming into shift. Some people have never been in the industry before. If it was anything, I would tell them or try to teach them or get them believing is listen to everything and only behave some of it.
Okay.
My advice...
You did say one thing.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's true. My advice would be take a moment and listen to our indispensable developer show. Because there is a lot of information in there that actually covers working with other people and starting out. It's a matter of understanding that Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a matter of understanding where you fit on that bell curve and trying to hopefully never get to that point where you feel you know everything in it, because the moment you do, you know nothing.
I mean, you can become an expert in a particular field, but you'll never be an expert in all of the fields, ever. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of polymath you are. It's not possible.
What would you tell them, Chris?
So Josie touched on something where she was talking about the development environment setup, and that made me realise my setup is perfect for me. What I do, and it changes quite often, and it depends on who I work with, and sometimes I'll speak to somebody and they'll show me a new tool and I'll be like, oh my God, that solves a problem. I'll use it. Enterprise Architect by Sparks is one particular tool that I learned 5 or so years ago. And it's a design tool. It helps you create component diagrams and UML graphs and all kinds of stuff. It's brilliant, and it's a very, very powerful tool. But anyway, digress a little bit. The point I was trying to make is that if you think about how your environment is set up, it is component parts of all of your experiences across your career so far. What is to say that because you prefer to use Jira as a bug management tool or whatever it is, it's a tracking tool, isn't it?
Issue
Jira?
tracking, yes.
Yeah, issue tracking. So because you prefer Jira, there's nothing to say that the 700 other tracking management tools that are out there are worse than yours. That's my advice. Look at what you do and where it's come from, where that experience has come from, and try and think about other people. Think about why you've come to that conclusion that this is Visual Studio's the best IDE in the world. It's not. I use different IDEs now. I've got more experience because for different purposes, and there's 600 of each IDE that I use that I could use.
Notepad. Just saying.
It doesn't matter. I use Notepad for some things. It's not
Notepad. I use Notepad plus.
It's not the specifics that matter. It's how you interact with other people and how you actually get to the point where you've decided that this is your best workflow, and it's only your best workflow because you know how to use those tools. That's your answer.
Yep.
And in the end, it's your best workflow. Right now, it's going to change. Mm-hmm. It never stops changing, which goes back to what you said, Chris.
Yeah, it's
always changing. Change is the only constant.
The more it changes, the more it stays the same, though. I will stress that. It's a thing. And
to be fair, that's a whole of the... I'll have to come back on to talk about that.
Tool Tepe goes back to what we were talking about with him and his stubbornness. He says, as long as it's based on some unreasonable string of logic, I very often get we cannot use this or that or do it this way because reasons. I'm very stubborn up until the point I get something thought through. The more you know, the more you realize how little you actually know.
Yeah.
But there's also a point when you get something that hasn't been thought through, where there's an education point, especially if it's a junior, again, that you can mentor them or maybe teach them a little bit and not necessarily teach them your way, but teach them,
That's the thing. It's when if you're a senior or you're someone who is training somebody in, regardless of what they are, there is one skill that you can teach that is cross-platform, cross-everything, and that is critical thinking. And one of the number one parts of critical thinking is research and understanding options. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a place where I was trained growing up and they didn't teach the critical thinking. It was just, this is how it is. And I would go, I'd like to ask a question about why it is you do this so that I, understand. And I got shot down. Mm-hmm. It's like, no. I want to tell juniors, question everything that is taught to you, but do it in the manner of the perspective of critical thinking. Not I just read this white paper written by these students from Purdue University. Screw that. Critically think your way through it. Say, if someone says, we're going to be using this as part of our BDM, and throw it, whatever freaking acronyms that is. My brain can't remember it right now.
Oh, my
if they're
Lord,
use
acronyms.
That, you can sit there and you can say, okay, so we're using this. And you can ask why, and someone may tell you, but if they don't, research it for yourself and find out what other options there are, and maybe you can figure out why it was selected.
I have here.
Oh, no. You have something.
No, I'm not going to show you it because it's NDA covered. But I'm going to tell you I have 25 pages of a Moleskine notebook here full of acronyms from the new industry that I'm working in. Not just in industry, internal acronyms. And all of them already exist in the IT world for other things,
Welcome!
I've basically spent the last 2 weeks asking questions, and I've only spent the last 2 days, maybe 3 days, doing the work that I've been assigned to do. And this is just one of many things I've got to do, but that is it. I know that until I can't actually deliver on what someone wants me to do until, one, they're clear on what they want, And 2, I'm clear on what they want and how their existing systems sit together. And this is why seniors become seniors. And this is why people who were developers become solution architects and technical architects, because they get to a point where they can actually ask the right questions and they can form the right solutions for whatever situation.
And if you happen to be in one of those higher wonderful positions and someone who is just starting out asks you a question, answer it. Don't hoard that knowledge. Hoarding knowledge is actually detrimental to your job.
I love it when people offload onto me, because I mean, I make as many notes as I can. The more information I can get, the better, but I love it when that happens.
Giggity! Can I get that put into a GIF, please?
Oh, no.
Oh.
Well said, Chris. I am so happy. But yes, it's RTFM time, which is our part of the show where we get to rant and rave about something very, very specific that has occurred or not occurred. Chris, I'm going to actually let you go first.
All right, speaking of tolerance and understanding why people do things in a certain way and that my way is not wrong, never, ever check binaries into a repository for any circumstances ever, under any... No, just no. Especially not 50 gigs of binaries.
Woosa. Woosa.
Now, right, I can understand, right, if you've got I'm talking about binaries that are package managed as well. I'm talking about binaries that are managed by things like NuGet and NPM and Bower and all of the web tools that I use on a daily basis. They are there. The tools are there to restore things, and I just can't understand it. I just can't get my head around it. There's one business reason I can think of for this. It takes a little bit less time to compile the build, because you don't have to download the binaries every time you kick a build off or something.
Laziness.
But, I mean, especially when I've been told that the build process for this particular piece of software is 2.5 hours to build one piece of software. But it's massive. It's a huge global scale app, this.
Yeah.
And there's a whole DevOps process that kicks off and builds... entire Azure resource groups and stuff, but there's data in the database. There are MDF files in the repository. There are bulk copy files in there. Now, the only time I ever have a SQL statement saved into my repository is when it's lookup data, and even then, there's other ways to mitigate that. But 50 gigabytes, and I'm not talking about the history here. I'm talking about 50 gigabytes of binaries. Enough.
Wow. Again, woosah.
Yeah.
Deep breath, let it out. Dan?
Ladies first.
Chris is already gone. Oh. So... Hey, he's got the epic beard.
Bearded
I'm
lady.
the jealous one. In my particular case... my RTFM is pretty simple. If you are a web host, do not hold people's websites for ransom just so that you can make an extra buck.
Now,
fuck off.
You have no reason not to name and shame this web host, in my opinion. Unless you think there's a...
I will happily do this again. I cannot even begin to explain how pissed off I am at GoDaddy. Now, I get it. I understand that they have a great marketing team and that for a lot of people, GoDaddy works wonders for them. Fine. But if you use GoDaddy, please get in touch with me. Let me work with you. Let me save you. I will throw salt out. We'll say Hail Marys. We'll dance the Harry Carey. We'll do whatever it takes to cleanse you of said demon. I feel so strongly about this. Poor client of mine didn't get a notification that their managed platform was needed to be paid for. Again, they're on a recurrence thing. And they didn't get a notification that the recurrence didn't occur. And it only became a noticeable thing when I get an alert that says, they're gone, the site's down. I'm like, I wonder what's happening. So let's start up the process because, this is a P1 kind of incident. And I started the process and I went, okay, right, DNS is responding. I've had no problems with MX records. Emails are working fine. So it's not the domain. Now let's dig in to see what's going on. The entire site was missing out of their managed WordPress system in GoDaddy. And I looked at it and I'm like, what? Why? And in a conversation with the support engineer, they explained, oh, well, there was a grace period, a 20-day grace period, because there was no payment for this particular renewal. And no one had gotten a renewal notice or a not getting renewed notice or anything else like that.
Can I ask, do they have your number or the client's number, phone number on file?
They have the clients.
So they needed paying money, whatever the amount of money was, it doesn't matter. They needed paying money. They had a 20-day period where after it was due, yeah? And then they didn't have a sales team to contact you or anything like that on top of an email that should have went out but didn't go out. That could have been caught by a junk mail filter, or it could have just not went out at all.
Nope, at all. And the thing that gets me is, I spoke with the support engineer who said, hey, we can restore everything. I'm like, great. They said, we can even get the, 50% off for this. And I'm like, great. However, it'll cost $150 for us to restore the site files.
To click a button in the user interface.
To me, is ransoming somebody's site. That to me is old mafia, tech type kind of methodology and mentality. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Now, granted, I'm very pleased to know and learn that my client is ready to go away from the GoDaddy platform. I've been trying to work with them to get away for a while, but I'm absolutely gobsmacked. $150 to restore the files. And I'm sitting here going, I don't trust your backup system. I've got my own backups. I don't need you to restore the files.
I'm sure I saw an advert for GoDaddy on the television that said that you have a personal manager or personal...
you might hear in the UK, but this is not a UK GoDaddy thing.
Okay, right.
I'm willing to admit that it might be a separation of countries or what have you, but I'm sorry. What? No. Just, the entire situation irritates me, especially considering the particular clients I'm working for are charities. These people struggle to keep themselves afloat while doing whatever charity work they're doing. And to me, it literally feels like strong arm tactics. Like, a dead person can't pay their bill, but we'll just break your leg a little bit. And then you can pay us for the hospital bills for breaking your leg. It feels so dirty to me.
And it makes
dirty.
People have that experience. It makes them feel like they all behave like that, and that's normal, which gives everyone a bad name.
Or that's the thing, bless the cotton socks off my client. My client goes, we're being punished for this? Oh, no. It's not meant to be punitive. It's meant because we have to set up the tickets and start the process and then go find your files and your database thing and restore it. And I sat there afterwards and I went, bullshit. They're running a fucking script.
It
makes the customer feel like shit, first off. And second off, if they had no backups anywhere else, if they didn't have someone like me who is almost a stickler bitch about backups and testing and all that other stuff, they would have lost everything and had to pay that money.
They would have had no other choice.
Back. That is blackmail. That is fucking ransoming.
Bearing in mind that a lot of people who use GoDaddy, I probably the vast majority of people that would use a hosting company like GoDaddy won't be very technical. They'll be setting it, they might have a web company that don't want the responsibility of doing all the backups, so they use GoDaddy to do all of that. And they just say, right, well, that's the only way we can get this back. We've got no technical know-how. We've got no backups. We've no idea. Pay 150 quid and get it sorted.
The thing is, I'm sure there's something in the terms and conditions that explains exactly what happened, because they wouldn't be able to do something like this without that kind of stuff being written into gold and you sign it when you pay. It feels dirty to me, and because of the issues that I have had to mention about the things that I've dealt with GoDaddy on this show, listen to our previous RTFMs. I am like this close to starting up a web company known as Free Yourself from GoDaddy.
But that already
contact me. Well, the thing is, you can't do something like that because, at that point in time, there's a whole bunch of legal issues, etc.
Yeah.
But if you know somebody who's using GoDaddy, just get them in touch with me. I can point them at better places. They don't even have to use me. I am happy to recommend. There are so many better hosting environments. Cheaper, better, secure. Who won't sit there and tell you don't update for security reasons?
Yeah.
Kirsty.
Yeah. Getting into slander material now. Dan, have you got an RTFM?
Yeah, it's going to be a quick one. So
I'm sorry, Dan. I have completely destroyed your ability to talk this show.
Don't worry. There is not an echo on the stream. Whatever you do, for the love of all that is holy, do not store ISO images or disk images in repositories. Just don't.
It's binary. It's the same thing as I said. Basically, it should not be there. Somebody. Actually, when I whinged about this, by the way, the repository binary thing, similar thing in our chat channel, and somebody, I think it was Nexus, possibly.
Yes.
Came back and said, store containers in there instead. And container configuration, yes, absolutely. I just want to be very clear. A container is a binary, and it should not be stored whatsoever. The whole point of creating a container is that a container is an instance of a configuration, and if there's any persistence in that container, you've designed the container incorrectly, and it should be separate, and it should be backed up with a backup process, normally. Now, obviously, if you've got Kubernetes or you've got a container management system that's slightly different, you can be a little bit more relaxed with that, but yes.
But yes, it's echoed yours. I've seen in the last few weeks someone storing as many Linux images as they can because they want their own repository of them. And yeah, GitLab isn't the place to do that.
No.
A
code repository, let's say, because there are container repositories that exist for containers, and there are ISO, whatever they're called, as Linux registries and things like that. You can store ISOs in. That's fine, but not in a code repository. If you really need, if the game dev industry, very, very heavy on binaries and assets, very, very heavy, and they need to be source controlled. So they use a very specific type of repository to do that, such as Perforce or something like that. Then that's acceptable, but it's separate to your code base, or it's in a management system that can cope with both. Anyway.
Right. So we're now at the end of our show.
Yes.
And I want to give a massive thank you to absolutely everybody who showed up in our chat. Hello, Andy F. I'm watching you at some point in time. Andy F, you need to come on the show so we can talk things. I'm on to you, Andy F. Andy F, Andy F. I'm going to say your name one more time, Andy F.
If I can do it, Andy F, so can you.
Yeah. Dweeb. Then there's Invina. It's what you say to your fellow devs. We're evil to each other. But also thank you to Invina. Thank you so much to Tulip. I'm just going to call you Tulip from now on.
Tultepe.
It's Tultepe. But I'm just going to call him Tulip just because. And I absolutely don't. But we need to get him on so we can talk about PLC programming and how repositories don't always make the best use of, or how it's very difficult to do repositories with PLCs and certain applications and programmings due to proprietary code setups and IDs and all kinds of other things. All right. Yes, massive thank you to all of you guys. And thank you to everybody for joining in. And for you who are listening to us in the future or watching us in the future, we hope to see you live.
And Dan, this is your moment to, if you've got any projects or you want to mention the companies you work for, feel free. If you don't.
I prefer to keep it vague and not advertise who I work for because it can be somewhat sensitive. So you won't find me streaming on Twitch. You won't find me streaming on YouTube. I post the occasional private video on YouTube, unlisted videos. So you won't find me anywhere.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to
You'll
actually...
find me here on DNI stream.
I'm going to actually take something and I'm going to throw it in his face. Do you know what you could be pimping right now, which you so aren't?
What?
I am now, for those of you who are listening to us in the future, showing a particular icon on the sleeve of my jacket that is known as a glyph.
Mm.
It's an Ingress thing.
Right, okay.
Go play Ingress, choose blue.
I've still not played the Ingress. I don't even know really what it... Pokemon Go, that's all I'm... It's kind of like that.
Yep.
But probably better in your eyes.
It's Pokemon Go for teams.
And also, as Envina just said, you should be bragging about having a great wife.
Oh,
so yes,
I'm the one who finds myself blessed. I feel so lucky to have this man as a husband.
Oh, it's enough of that. Get a room, right. So yes, come on, visit our website, www.dnistream.live. I launched something new this week. We have order by drop down on our show list page, and it is going to get a little bit better as well. It's a bit shonky at the moment, but we're getting there. And you can find links to our
issues.
Yes, and we've also had a few issues raised this week by other people. There are actually conversations going on in our GitHub issues list, and I'm very excited. I can't wait to respond to them and fix bugs. It's the first time in my life I've actually wanted to fix a bug, so thank you for that, Gordon. So you can find our Twitch, Discord, Twitter, and YouTube channels on our website as well. And you can contact us on there if you want to become a guest or you've got any topics that you think we need to discuss. I actually have a topic, and I'd like to put it out there to people who are listening. If you know anybody who is an IoT or edge computing expert or fog computing expert, I want to speak to them because I'm currently very, very focused on that in something I'm working on, and I'm learning a lot about it, and I'm fascinated by it all. So I want to get geeky with somebody. So please get in touch.
Wow. Speaking of our website, though, our code is available at github.com/documentation not included. I went in and I was like, maybe I should change that to DNI Stream because that seems to be our moniker now is DNI Stream. And I don't know. And we may have to just sort of slightly reset it up or something. I don't know because you can't quite rename.
I don't think you can rename them, no.
No, you can't. But that's okay. But anyway, if you have ideas, create your tickets. And we hope to see you guys Thursday at 7 p.m. GMT next week. We'll have a topic that'll be revealed soon. The week after that, we're going to be joined by the absolutely amazing lead dev, Sam, from VMware to be discussing code reviews. Yay. And what they are, how to do them, how to not do them, how to make someone's life, hopefully not end because you have done a code review. Get over the fear of code reviews is pretty much what it'll probably end up being about. But it's goodbye from all of us. So goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from my better half, Dan.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me, Josie. See you next week, everyone.